But for me, grace always seems to show up when I don't really want it. Grace shows up when someone, comes at me in a wrong way or says something wrong. Grace shows up in the inconvenience of cutting me off or in the shopping cart line, or whatever. It's in those moments, those moments of our life where we're not planning it. That's the opportunity to show grace. And so kind of the exciting thing of this, when you think about that power of God's love and showing you, is that as you walk through the day, kind of looking for the opportunities. And by doing that, it's saying, okay, God, let someone cut me off, or whatever it might be. Our human reaction is to go through the end of the day and keep taking offense. Imagine what your life would be like, but even the life of the people around you in this world, if it was seen totally opposite. I could look at someone and think, man, yeah, they came down really hard on something, but wow, what a huge opportunity for me to know more about grace. To be able to move by God into a deeper level of what it means to really extend grace, not conditioned on them, but conditioned on God's love for me and with the joy of all that I've experienced that He's had. I mean, man, it just flips your worldview if we begin to live that way, because you see everything now as opportunities. Well, let me go on to the third thing here, because we have certainly it validates, and then also it's the opportunity to be able to show grace and offer grace to others. But also in verses 8 through 12, it says this. So he talks about those actions. He says, love never fails. And then he says, but where there are prophecies, they'll cease. Where there are tongues, they will be still. And he's talking about things that the Corinthian church hold in high regard. Where there's knowledge, it'll pass away. For we know part and we prophesy in part. But when perfection comes and the imperfect disappears, when I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put childish ways behind me. Now we see by poor reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. I can't imagine when this church read that letter. I mean, how some of us have thought, are you kidding me? That's the greatest of all of these things? To me, I look at this and I think, one of the why love matters so much, the third reason, is that it brings about healing. And when I say healing, maybe another word is restoration. It brings things back to the way it was supposed to be. The Bible describes life. There was the perfection of God's creation, Adam and Eve. Sin brought sin into the world, and then it was just broken and destroyed, and sin just penetrated all areas of the world. And life in the kingdom coming has just about been restoration, isn't it? It's just about trying to make things better and recognizing, look, we're never going to reach perfection on this side, but as Paul even describes here, he says, look, it's going to be a poor reflection in the mirror right now. When we look at what perfect is, when we look at what a fully healed life is, right now, you look at them and say, yeah, it's a little, the reflection isn't that great. But it's getting there. And then the day will come where it'll be perfect. Where right now, the Bible talks about how we are in Christ, that validated our identity in Christ, that as someone looks at me and says, well, Mark's kind of a half-hearted effort in what Christ would be, and he's got a lot of things to tweak, and I could go through a long laundry list of stuff, but yeah, I see some areas where he's definitely what the Bible talks Christ is like. And then day in and day out, gets a little better, and then the day will come for every one of us where we stand before Christ face to face. And we know Him. Not because we read about Him, but because we experienced Him in that journey along the way as His love in us, and as He worked in us. I was thinking of a verse that I don't know if I had it in here, but where in John 17, that Jesus said that, God, I showed them your love for me, and now your love is in them as they work, and I am in them. And He's describing this relationship that we have, that in this This imperfect reflection of Christ gets better and better and better as Christ continues to work in us, to the point when we look at him face to face and we know him because we have seen him in ourselves as he's worked in us. That's why love is so important. When you understand how that cloud of sin is being pulled away and all those imperfections are being drawn away as this power of God's love is at work in us. Excuse me. We work towards it. 1 Peter 4:6 says this, above all, love each other deeply because love covers over a multitude of sins. It's describing love as this ointment that goes into our lives, that when we sit here with, we could go through probably sit around together and have the person on your right tell you what you think is a flaw about the person on your left or something, we could do that. And maybe it'd be fun to do because, you know what, if we understood, I know, some of you are freaking out. Let's start over here. No. No. Because if we understood how love could be applied to that, what a healing. I mean, I bet every one of us would say that no one needs to tell me my flaws. Have you ever been, I've been in a group where, everybody take a turn to tell you what you like about the person, and it's your turn. I don't know if you've ever been in one of those kind of groups. It's a very uncomfortable place because you got 10 people saying all these things they like about you, and you just really feel it's hard to handle. Maybe you guys can take it. For me, it's hard to handle because I think of all the things that are wrong that I have. I mean, it's like, well, they don't know this, they don't know that. But really, I mean, the beauty of that moment is that it's grace being applied as an ointment that brings about healing. And I wonder how many of us don't need that kind of a group to sit around who's going around saying, here's what I like about you. God, this is what it makes me smile about you. This is what you're good at. We need to do more of that. And then one of the reasons that he's describing here is because when love is applied, it's not temporary. It's everlasting. When it brings about healing, it brings about restoration. It brings about wholeness. It carries on. All the other stuff we do for each other, that's good for this world to kind of get through. But what Paul says here, but when it comes to love, it carries with you. You take it with you. This relationship, this love we have for God, the love we have for each other, just continues to build and grow. Accomplishments like trophies, plaques. I mean, most of the plaques and trophies in real estate I got, I don't know why I kept them. They're in an attic somewhere. Not all of them. Some of them, I never look at them. And I can tell you, unless Jesus, I do that so often. God's telling me something. I'm pointing to my wife. She asked me to call her that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, G. No. Unless she takes those things and put them in my coffin. And even then, I'm not taking them with me. It'll clean up the closet. That'd be about it. But it doesn't. But love, on the other hand, it's everlasting. It carries on. That's why it's so important, so valuable, because it's one of those lasting qualities that we always goes with us. It always builds. It always strengthens. It always heals the ugliness in our life. The video described this ugliness. And God, the power of God's love applied in those settings brings about healing. Let me tell you, here's my goal over the next 40 days. I pray, I ask that God works in me to be known as a loving person, a more loving person. That people see in me that I love God more than maybe they know. That I love people more than they know. That I can take certain situations in my life, certain individuals in my life, and allow the power of God's love to change that. I've had that experience. I might have shared here once before in a church where there was a conflict. I was an elder.